Hello and welcome to the latest installment of the Atticus Advantage webinar series, Take Control of Your Time to Better Manage Your Practice, presented by attorney and adjunct practice advisor Michele Fuller and Atticus Director of Client Services, Denise Gamez. As a company, Atticus was founded back in 1989, and its ongoing support and accountability programs for lawyers and law firms increase gross revenues, reduce stress, develop greater career satisfaction, and allow more time for family and personal interests. In fact, everything that we do is designed to that end, streamlining the management of the practice, increasing revenue, the reduction of stress, and achieving a balance between your professional and personal life. We typically work with solo and small firm attorneys, managing partners and leaders, legal associations on a local, regional, and national level, and really from start to exit, from a practice's infancy to its twilight years, Atticus has principles and strategies to foster growth, or for those attorneys looking to get out of the game, establish an effective exit strategy. A brief overview of our coaching services and products. We've got the monthly webinars, of which the Advantage series is a part, one-day workshops, quarterly in-person group programs, one-on-one coaching, and our library of books. Over the past 3 decades of working with law firm owners, we've realized that your legal skills, the technical work that you do, are just one element of your practice. To build a truly successful practice, lawyers need to have a mindset shift about the way they think about their role in running the practice. Just being a smart, amazing attorney for clients isn't enough to strategically grow a practice. Rather, attorneys must master 4 core business management skills as well. And you can see them here: time management, marketing, staffing, and profitability. You could almost think of these as the 4 legs on a table. If even one of them is off, the entire structure becomes wobbly and less effective. So, touching a bit more on that mind shift, attorneys need to shift their thinking away from first identifying as a great lawyer and instead first identify as a practice owner or legal business owner. But this isn't an overnight change. Attorneys typically start by learning to manage themselves, their habits, their calendar, their processes. Then they learn to manage a team in recruiting, hiring, training, and developing. And finally, they begin to manage the team's leaders through strategic delegation. So with that brief introduction out of the way, allow me to introduce our interviewer for this webinar, Director of Client Services, Denise Gamez. Denise joined Atticus in 2011 and has helped hundreds of attorneys assess their strengths and overcome their challenges. Prior to Atticus, Denise was a legal marketer focusing on business development. Denise, welcome.
Thank you, Jess, and welcome everybody. You guys are in for an amazing treat today, having Michele Fuller on this webinar with us today. She's just amazing. She is an award-winning special needs and elder law attorney, over 22 years in practice of law. She's an accomplished author. She's a longtime Atticus client, and now she's a good friend of mine, so I'm lucky there. Michele, welcome to the webinar, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really thrilled to be here.
So we talked about the four table legs of that Jeff mentioned. And so essentially today we're going to talk about that first one, which is time management. And it is probably the most important one because, Michele, you can speak to this, how everything else just kind of builds off that first table leg of time management.
Yeah, if you can't manage your own day, manage your time. I mean, some days are more successful at it than others, but I can always kind of tell when I've slipped in being able to do that, because if you leave the office at the end of the day and you just worked your hiney off all day long, but you still feel like you didn't get anything accomplished that needed to get done that day, are you managing your time well? Well, the answer is no. And so, when there's a feeling of accomplishment, your team, nobody's incredibly stressed about getting work product done, you're accomplishing goals. That's how you can really tell that you're managing your time, managing your staff, and there's a good work-life balance.
Okay, so participants, get ready. Make sure you have some paper and pencil handy or some way to take some notes. And especially if you think of a question that you want to ask at the end, we'll have the ability to do that with Jeff for you guys to ask some questions. So if you think of something along the way, make sure you write that question down. So we talk about attorneys being the hero of the firm. And Jeff touched on it briefly about the managers getting to that level. And so how do we go from being the boss, the heroic lawyer? How do you even tell if you are the hero? Well, if people are coming to you to change the toner in your copy machine, then you're probably the hero of the law. So we have a couple of ways of breaking this down, from being the boss and the heroic lawyer to becoming the leader of your firm and really owning the practice, becoming that business owner. Michele, talk about what your aha moment was when you went from being the boss or the heroic lawyer to being the leader.
I think key for me was having a staff that I trusted. That's a hard lesson. So sometimes we learn where we don't delegate. And so for me, the way that I built my practice was a little bit different than most. I was a mom in a difficult marriage. I had 4 children under the age of 5, one with autism. And so I had to have, from the beginning, very clear and hard boundaries about work time versus family life. And so I had to have a team that I could delegate to. It was a critical component. But the problem was I was delegating without accountability. And so there were constant fires. And so for me, what I realized is that I wasn't delegating properly. I wasn't setting my team up for success, and I wasn't hiring the right people. So I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But I think the real shift for me became when I made the firm and my whole mindset shifted, when everything became more about my team than about me. That was a huge shift for me. And as a result, my team got better. I had to hire better people in order to empower, that I was willing to invest in and empower. So for me, that was the critical moment.
How did you, when you went from that 4th bullet point there, very few boundaries and work is all consuming, to defining your boundaries and setting those with your staff, how did you go about doing that? How did you set that up? And how did you make sure that the staff understood it was good for everyone?
I love that you asked me that, because what happened for me is a little bit different than other people's story. But one of the things that really switched for me was that I had to have boundaries where evenings and weekends were just not an option because of my family demands. But what's happened is that I've also created those boundaries for my team. Nobody's working late. Nobody's working weekends. And what switched there is that, how do we make it happen? And what we do is we have to have a lot of efficiencies within the office. We have to have processes and policies so that, one, that first bullet point, well, what needs to be done today? A lot of times, do you plan for it? Do you know what's coming up? Or are you just constantly putting out fires? Having your staff constantly have to come to you for all the answers, and they're afraid to make a mistake. But the boundaries, like for instance, in our office about a year and a half ago, we started closing at noon on Fridays. And so that is a hard boundary, and I had to enroll my team in that. And that's the key difference. So when I go on vacation, or if it's an evening or a weekend, I don't get pummeled with questions by my team, because I've enrolled their help in making that goal happen. And I've enrolled them, and we are all enrolled in having work end at noon on Fridays. So that means that the processes and the policies and that have to be in place for that to happen, everyone is part of that. So it's not just me saying, this is what's going to happen. This is how we are going to make it happen. So even the language and the whole mindset changes. So it's at times it's a challenge to meet that. But it's very satisfying for everybody.
Our next slide is going to show you boss versus leader. And so it's, we're talking about the boss is sort of like, you depend on the authority, you're trying to motivate through fear, and it really does backfire on you. How did you go about building the goodwill and then acknowledging your team? I mean, did you incorporate scorecards? Did you set goals for them? And then how did you turn around and acknowledge them for them accomplishing what you were trying to do?
One of the things that we've done, there's a couple simple things. There's some easier things and some harder things. So the easy thing, I'll start with the easy things. So some of the things that we've just done, like today, perfect example, we got a 5-star review on Google. And what I love about those is that it's not me saying how great I am as a lawyer, as a firm, we're a great firm. It's someone else saying how great we are. And I love that. And what I especially liked about today's, the one that we saw today, was that the client put their full name on the review and they mentioned all the team members in the firm that helped them. So it wasn't all about me, it was about all of us. And so our policy is that anyone who helps to generate a 5-star review for the firm, I buy lunch for everybody. So they love it. It's a small reward, but it really helps the firm and it acknowledges the team. And it's not me saying how great people, I think you are, which is always nice, but that's an affirmation that we're doing a great job and knocking it out of the park. And it's not me alone that's doing it. I have a small part of it. Everyone else is the daily interaction and how that client feels through the experience. So that's a huge win for the team.
And something I hear a lot is, sorry, go ahead.
No, go right ahead, Denise.
I say something I hear a lot from attorneys is, oh, well, my name's on the door. They want to hire me. They don't want to talk to my team. They only want to hire me. How do you go about setting that expectation? Because, again, this is key to your time management and key to protecting and defining your boundaries, having your team be an integral part of all of this. So how do you go about setting up the expectations and letting the client know that your team is amazing?
That is a fabulous question, and that was something that took some time to get used to because, in that first slide, you can see all the accolades, right? I've written a lot and I speak a lot, and that's all me, 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 me. And to switch the mindset to talk about how great your team is and develop your team so that, again, so you can delegate and you've got boundaries, people can make decisions and carry things out and do them well when you're not directing them to, is something that happens slowly over time, and it starts with you, the attorney who's leading the firm. And for me, how I set that up with my client is we tell them what to expect, and I make sure that I introduce, if I don't have that paralegal or that staff person in the meeting, I make sure I bring them in for at least a few minutes and talk to them about what's going to happen. And the way I introduce this concept is by, telling a client how we work is just like a doctor's office, right? There's a whole team of people that help, especially like a surgeon. I happen to have a particular specialty, and so I'm like a surgeon. The surgeon isn't doing the billing for the insurance company. They're not answering the phone. They're not cleaning up the OR. They come in, they do their surgery, they oversee, make sure everything's good, and then they leave. And of course, there's lots of accountability built in to make sure there's consistency of care, and there's even aftercare and all that. And that's kind of the focus and the model that we ran on. And if we just tell people up front what to expect, and that, and how wonderful the team is, they're going to be in good hands, they feel very comfortable. I've got no complaints. Once in a blue moon, there's somebody who insists on talking to me, and honestly, it's usually an attorney referral, not a client.
Okay.
But I also make it very clear that if there's a legal question that needs to be decided, that doesn't come from a paralegal. That's follow-up for me. And that's okay. But honestly, it doesn't happen all that often. We try and get that all out in the beginning, but just telling people what to expect and how it works, make them feel safe, check in with them, any questions, concerns. People love the communication. I've had no pushback on that. Very, very little. Like I said, when I do, it's usually from attorneys.
And how did you get over that hurdle of saying, "Oh, you know what? I don't have to be the hero anymore"? How did you decide, make that decision?
Well, I have to tell you, it feels good to be the hero. So I had to kind of get out of my own way, frankly. And where really push came to shove is that my firm didn't feel good. It didn't feel good to go to work. I never knew what to expect during the day. I was ruled by my calendar. I had no time for creativity. I certainly had no time to work on processes or my firm is a business. I was just processing legal work. And honestly, I was putting out a lot of fires every day. And the frustrating part to me was that every day it was about what fires I was going to put out first, and most of them were preventable. So I realized at some point that I was the chief arsonist. I had unwittingly, through lack of processes, not hiring the right people, not delegating properly. And this was a hard lesson. And especially when I had, some turnover in staff and it was just constant frustration. So that to me was the like, something's got to give. And it wasn't, I love working with my clients. I really love this area of practice. It was the practice itself and the running of it that was incredibly frustrating, and preventable mistakes, which are incredibly frustrating. So for both the client, staff, and me. So that's when I was like, okay, enough. Something needs to give here. So it's when the pain gets bad enough, that's when you start going, okay, what do I do? How do I fix this?
Yeah. And there are consequences to staying in that mindset and that technician mindset. I always say it's sort of like, you can run 5 miles on a treadmill, but did you really go anywhere? And you didn't. So I hear a lot from attorneys too that, I don't work that much. I probably work only about maybe 60 hours a week, and I only come in on Saturdays. I refuse to come in on Sundays. And I'm just like, do you realize you can take Fridays off too?
Right.
So talk about how, the consequences of staying in that mindset, not shifting to a growth mindset, how that can, it can really hurt a lot more than just your office life.
Oh, absolutely. It's, just thinking about, constant interruptions. What does that feel like at the end of a day? Well, it feels like you've been pecked to death by a duck. Nothing in particular is terribly painful, but it's enough to really just ruin your day, and nothing gets accomplished. And all you're doing is responding to other people's needs. And we're already spread really thin. Managing, and this isn't for just women, this is men and women. Are you able to coach your kids, t-ball team or soccer team? And if you feel like you can't, why is that? Are you home for dinner? Sometimes people use it as an escape because maybe things at home aren't so great. But is that okay? Maybe it's not so great because when you're there, you're not really present. You're thinking about work all the time. Certainly there's a tremendous amount of burnout and anxiety. You're not feeling good about what you're doing or why you're doing it. So when you ask me, or if I'm asked by, people say, oh, you're a lawyer. Oh, so many people are so, it's the I'm so busy syndrome. Oh, I'm so busy. Well, it's good to be busy, but are you doing what you love? And so, how different would that feel if you walk in and you feel energized? I can't wait. And I love that feeling. So when things start going well and you start getting some results, then it just makes you want more of it. So it's, I don't like feeling like any of those things on the left, the whole left column. That's horrible. And frequent turnover is, I think, a test of your management style. And again, I had some hard lessons that I've learned along the way. I've been doing this for 22 years, and it's been an evolution. And a lot of the success, I think, has been attributed to my participation in coaching. And because I don't learn these skills. When I'm in law school, they're not teaching you how to be a good manager, how to talk to people, how to manage people. They don't teach you anything about that. They teach you skills about, how to be a good lawyer and really how to think. And so this is thinking differently. And it's a skill that's learned over time. And so, certainly cash flow issues, those are awful. Stagnation, you're not growing, and where you feel like you can't delegate. So why is that? You don't have that great team. And I have to tell you, for the first time in my career, I would tell you that I would rehire every single person that works for me today. And I didn't get there overnight. It only took, I'm a slow learner, 22 years. But every time you do this, you get better. And you learn from every person that you hire. And, people that you wish you had fired sooner.
Yeah. There are so many costs to having the staff that can't think for themselves, and the frequent turnover. It's such a costly thing to have, where just in time alone. I mean, that's the time management issue right there.
Yeah.
In time alone, what it costs you to interview and hire, or if you have to fire somebody, just going through the process.
There's statistics that show that the cost to the business of someone leaving is 3 times their salary. And I believe that. And you've invested in someone. And with the market being the way it is with employment, it's incredibly competitive for the employee. They're able to make a lot of choices. And so as a firm, recently, I would think over the past year, we've really introduced a lot of perks for the staff. So things that a small law firm traditionally didn't offer, like a full 401k and healthcare and disability insurance and additional paid time off. Those are the things that keep and attract really high quality people, of course, along with salary. And so it makes me think very hard about who I'm hiring, because it's not just about the salary. It's about the investment in that individual. Is this someone that I want to invest in? And it has made all the difference.
And giving them some ownership in the firm really makes them feel like a part of, when you have ownership in something, you're going to take really great care of it. And so giving them a little bit of ownership is going to make them perform better.
I agree. And authority, empowerment. You don't do it overnight. But again, like you asked me earlier about scorecards, and that's one of the key pieces that we're working on right now. And I know there's other colleagues that, coach with us and alongside me that have implemented that. And the key part, you don't necessarily have to have, and this doesn't happen overnight. Again, it's a lot of work, small positive changes that overall, sometimes you look back on it and go, wow, I have done a lot this quarter, this year. But what happens is that if you delegate without accountability, it's abdication. And I know that because I've done it. And it doesn't go well. That might work for a little while depending on the person, but it's very hard. And if that person leaves and there's no processes in place, they may take a lot of historical knowledge with them to kind of have you at their mercy. And it's very hard to replace that person. So the idea is that you don't want to stay in this place as being the great technician. If you want to evolve into a happy business owner that has steady cash flow and you enjoy coming in, you can't stay in this place. And all of those characteristics that we're seeing on the screen right now about cash flow, all this pressure, it's all unhappiness.
Yep.
And I don't like to live there. Yeah.
So I feel like we're bringing it down. So we're talking about these ugly consequences, but let's talk about some of the benefits of making the switch to being a leader, an owner, managing partner of the firm, like truly developing what we've been talking about. More free time. Michele, you take 175 days off every year. Yep,
at least.
Everyone thinks I'm crazy when I tell them that.
Well, the first thing that we talk about is this, and that's one of the challenges. So when we talked about like all the different ways you can participate in coaching, I both participate in a group called Dominate Your Market, as well as in the one-on-one coaching. And it has been a challenge to hit 175 days, but it's not so bad when you look at, you're taking weekends off, holidays, and it's, several vacations and some dedicated time off. But what I like about this is that some of the benefits of not staying in that technician, that great technician, is that you actually increase your effectiveness as an attorney and your happiness quotient, right? It's just, and your whole family, it's like this little cascade that happens drip by drip by drip. And when you look back, you're like, oh, wow, this is all better. I feel better. This is a happy place to work, and it's a happy place to go home. Certainly your family's happier because you're able to spend more time with them. You're able to be present when you're with them. And it's just a higher quality of life. And it's really neat to see some of the people like in the coaching group and what they're up to. They're people doing some pretty extraordinary things. And what's interesting as a lawyer is that, you're in that great technician, and if you're just putting out fires, you don't have the freedom and creativity to kind of reach for those higher goals. And it doesn't have to be, like climbing Everest. It can be something simple, like taking a week off with your family, going to the beach and having some fun and not worrying about what you're going to come back to at the office. So it's very freeing. And it's very powerful. It's a much more enjoyable way to be and to live and to work, not just for the partner, but also for the team. And when they're happier, they're going to stay where they're at. And so there's much less turnover, and it's just, and for the clients too, I think they have a much better experience. There's greater stability. You get better referrals. And by implementing this, I think it makes your firm far more valuable.
Well, you talk about resale value on the firm, and if somebody sees you working 60, 70 hours a week, nobody wants to buy that job. That's a job.
Right.
That's not a
That's
career.
A terrible. So you're gonna. I love that. Oh, so you're going to sell me your terrible life? Awesome.
Yeah.
Essentially. Nobody wants that. That's a great point, because people be the example, right? And we say that in so many areas of our lives, but this is key. It's really hard to attract a good associate or a good successor in any respect if they see you not enjoying your life, stressed about the practice and developing. So how do we develop these skills, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It's something that you actually have to work for and reach for and want to be.
Absolutely. Well, one of the key things that we found that helps with hiring and making sure that you can get the right person in there is we use the DISC. And so it's a personality profile. It was developed by a Harvard professor. And he found that we all operate on these 4 areas of our personalities, and it's not going to tell you if they're a good person. It's not going to tell you if they're going to be some stellar employee, but it will tell you if they have the right personality or mindset for the tasks that you're wanting them to do. So, Michele, talk about how you implemented the DISC into your hiring process.
This has been my secret sauce, because it is. You have to. So my DISC is I'm a fairly high I, which means that I really like to connect with people. So I'm not terribly strong, or I've been a lot better recently, but I have to really. I'm not one of those people that naturally loves doing lists and filling out forms and processes. So that means that I tend to hire from the gut. Oh, I really like you. That doesn't work. When I started using DISC profiles, it was, like I said, it was my secret sauce. Because what it does is it tells me, first I have to think about, which is a concept, I have to stop and think about the skills that I need this person to have. And more importantly, what values I want them, that I really need to have in order to be effective at that position. So let's take, for instance, a marketing position in the firm. What qualities does that person have to have? I want somebody who's outgoing, right? Who's not afraid to talk to people, who loves connecting with people. So I think of you, Denise. You're the head of customer relations, right? You need to be somebody who enjoys being around and talking with people. So that's going to be, to me, that's somebody who's a high I, somebody who is enthusiastic about being in a social setting, and they thrive in that. They blossom under those circumstances. And I would like to have, a lot of C. C is your conscientiousness. That's your, the rules. They need to understand how things work, and great follow-up. Those high C people tend to be your engineers. So those, I have to think about the qualities of how people work. So some of this is reflected in personality, certainly, but as you pointed out, it's not a good or bad. And that's something that I have all of my staff take as prospects, not once they're in. So what I don't want in that marketing position is someone who, say, is a high S, low I. There are certain qualities where they're not going to be successful, and it's going to be difficult for them. I may like them a lot, but they're not going to be successful in that position. Right. I myself am a DI. So but my whole
We have
team
the
are
same profile.
SCs. Yeah, I think we do. I think we do.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, whatever your DISC is, so the first thing I do is, you have to start with you. And it becomes like a key understanding about how you work. So even starting with yourself as a member of the firm, how do I support myself in my needs in order to be able to delegate with accountability and be comfortable doing so? And so for me, my whole team are SCs. But what I love about the DISC, and the more you learn about it, it's really about how to effectively communicate with your team. So with my DISC profile being almost the complete opposite of everyone else's, I don't always relate to them innately. Like we don't, so birds of a feather, right? Your friends tend to be people that are kind of more and communicate like you. So people with a high S tend to be so anti-conflict that anything that looks or smells like it could be a conflict, they won't discuss, right? And for me, I'm far more direct. So sometimes that mode of communication. So what I love about this is that when we learn about the DISC, it not only helps you identify the working style of people that will fit an appropriate position, but it also helps in terms of management because it helps you communicate with your team members in a way that they can hear it. So like you'll see in a high S, doesn't like to be rushed, a very calm approach. They like to be part of a team. They're wonderful people to work with on a team. But when I talk to people that are a high S, I come off like I'm screaming at them, or I'm almost confrontational, even though I'm talking just like I'm to you. And so I have to learn how to not put people. So, for instance, in staff meetings, I have learned you don't put your high S on the spot. So that whole doesn't like to be rushed. That also means that they need time to process, and they want to be careful about what they respond. So if you put somebody like that on the spot, they're going to freeze and they're going to feel uncomfortable. And you may not even realize that you're doing it. So that's why I love these DISC profiles and the work that we do with regard to these, because it's honestly, it is my super secret sauce to keeping not just, hiring the right people, but managing your awesome team that you're investing in. It's also useful in talking to clients because each of these DISC profiles reacts in a certain way. So for instance, if you're, let's just say it's at the initial engagement and someone is a high D, they like to feel in control. So checking in with them. Are you okay if we talk about this now? Do you have any more questions? Let them kind of control the conversation and they will feel safe and respected. Someone who is a high I, trust and that emotional connection is a really big deal. Someone who is a high S, they're going to need to take that retainer home and look at it and deliberate on it. I wouldn't expect an answer right away. And you get to know how to effectively communicate to suit their needs. And it's like, honestly, it's like a ninja. You come in and people don't even know him. They think you're magic. And it's a talent to be able to, that is something that it's incredibly satisfying work because it helps all of these relationships go so much smoother.
Yeah. And it's going to go back to that time management factor with the staff and the hiring and having to fire somebody or somebody quitting because, if you can understand that they have the right personality for the tasks, then that hire is going to be a much safer hire than not using the DISC. So,
without a doubt, and it's absolutely, and it's incredibly important on the initial hire. But that communication, even between team members, because a lot of people will say, well, I don't like me. This is my least favorite part of the practice. And well, why is that? Because you're struggling with something. This gives you some incredible skills to be able to help manage that effectively. And it shows up in different areas because people are people, right? There's human beings everywhere in our lives. And whether we're managing them, their clients, we're serving them, it gives you some incredible insight as to how people
can you guys still hear me? I think I lost somebody.
Yeah, Denise, I've still got you.
Okay,
I think
we lost Michele.
Yeah, I think we might have a bit of a technical difficulty with Michele, so she will likely be coming back on here shortly.
Okay.
And I do still
But
see her logged in. Yeah, go ahead.
okay, so I was just going to kind of continue with the disc and move into the next section. I'm sure she'll be back on here in a second.
Sorry about
but yeah,
that. I don't
so
know
like
what
Michele was
happened. I
saying,
popped off.
there she is.
Sorry about that.
So we missed your last thought on the disc.
I think that my only point was just that it really helps you in all areas of your life in managing good communication, positive communication, and it becomes a pleasure then instead of a chore.
Well, one of the biggest struggles I feel like that I hear from attorneys all the time is the phone. And so, you know, going back to if you are the hero of your firm, if you are a Batman, then you're answering your own phone calls, or you're taking calls when you really shouldn't be, when they should be maybe scheduled into your day, you know, blocking off time to return phone calls. And so this is a really big pain point for a lot of attorneys, Michele. Talk about some phone strategies that you've developed over time to make sure that you're not getting interrupted with a phone call.
This is, I have to tell you, this is one of my favorite things that we've been able to implement, and we've had some successes and some misses on this, but where we ended up has really worked. And so one of the first things that I could talk about is prospects, incoming calls. And so what we do is we have our person up front. Call her a client service coordinator. We don't call her a receptionist, client services coordinator. And what she'll do is she has a really wonderful and simple intake form where she has to, name the essentials. But then she's the one who asks them, what is the main issue that we can help you, that you need help with? And first of all, do we even practice in that area? Are they calling about something that we don't do? But she's able to, she's been with us about almost 2 years now, and she's able to give me a really great summary. And so I don't talk to a prospect that just calls in. She's their first intake person. She's the first person that they speak to. And then from there, an additional consultation is scheduled. So I don't just take ad hoc phone calls. Those are all my calls are scheduled. And again, where I get pushback is from attorneys, not from the public, not from clients. And so prospects, that has been a great strategy. I don't talk to prospects at all. For existing clients, it's a little bit different. As I mentioned in the beginning, what we do is we really try and set expectations with the client. How does this work? How does our firm work? Because what I don't like is people feeling like they can't get a hold of me. It's not that I'm inaccessible, but what I want to do is I tell them up front, tell them exactly what to expect. This is how this will work. They can generally contact the staff anytime they need to, but we talk about there's processes. If it's a process question or something that's kind of, it's non-legal, then you will get an immediate response here. If there's a larger question or you're confused about something or you want to have a little bit more guidance or something that's definitely anything that's a legal question, we're going to ask you to schedule a call, because what we don't want is to have phone tag. So that's the worst part, is that we're all busy, we're all working, and we also, one of the key things that we implemented was that everybody calls in on a conference line. So we have 10 available. We only use a couple, so we don't do that. With referral sources, it's the same thing. We completely avoid phone tag, and I don't care whether they're calling on their cell phone or they're working remotely or they're sitting in their office. The other advantage to having a call line is that sometimes with existing clients, they may have people that they count on that they want part of that conversation, and then I don't have to worry about how to add that all into the phone system. So an independent call-in line is key, and so we have 2 that we basically rotate, and it's in the calendar, so I know exactly where I'm calling in, and I have it preset on my phone at work on my desk, and I have it preset on my cell phone. So they don't have a no caller ID. It's set and everybody shows up at the same time. It's fantastic. The other thing is with referral sources, that's where I get a little bit of pushback, and there are some protocols. So I do a lot of settlement planning. So if it's a large trust, that's kind of a 911. huge settlement, that's a 911, that gets through the gate immediately. Everything else, everyone's busy. Nobody likes that tag you're it back and forth. And so referral sources most of the time accommodate a scheduled call. It just works really well. So with preset appointments, we have a protocol for that as well, which again has worked very, very well. It's a set time. Even within our calendar system, my admin knows exactly when I'm available for phone calls. Why is that so important? Because then I control my time. Again, this is about time management. I'm the one determining when I'm available. And it's not in the beginning of the day. That's when heavy lifting is done. That is when heavy, drafting or reviews or really important implementations, heavy lifting happens, and that's in the morning when I'm at my best and I'm thinking and I'm really energized. But I also love talking to people. I'm high I on the disc, and I get energized by that, and I really love doing that in the afternoon. And I tend to find that people are generally more available for that type of thing in the afternoon as well. The phone calls are set at a predetermined time for a length of time, and it's great. So if you do any kind of free consultations, having that time set is really critical. And it sets expectations up front. Super helpful. There's no ugly surprises. Oh, I'm done. Oh, I've got a call. And it's just really worked out quite well.
And I feel like the clients and even the referral sources feel very well taken care of, because now they know when they're actually going to get to talk to you, especially clients. They didn't just say, well, I left my attorney and a message and I don't know when I'll hear back kind of thing. So I feel they feel better about it by having that preset. Now,
Absolutely.
You sent this cartoon, and it cracks me up every time I see it, because we are, as a society, we're so addicted to our electronic devices. And they've done studies that having interruptions actually sets off like a dopamine effect in the reward center of our brains, where we're like, oh, we can't wait for that next interruption. So this just cracks me up. And I'm sure that this person, this guy that's holding the phone.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I have to tell you, I feel like this is my husband and I, and he tells me I do the same thing to him.
And he's an attorney.
Yes, he is. So getting two attorneys that are battling this dilemma, this constant pull of your phone, is really challenging. But I find that, it's rude, frankly, and disrespectful. But at the same time, you don't mean to be. But when you have this compulsion to check email, and I think that the law practice has evolved quite a bit, where the expectation of immediacy of response is really ridiculous. And frankly, electronics are where all of our information is, or at least a substantial amount of our information between us and our staff, are taking place. I mean, they're at a beautiful coffee shop, but he's not paying attention to her, and just very easily could be swapped with her not paying attention to him, by the way. Or have you ever looked around the restaurant and you see the adults might be talking, but where are the kids looking? They're all looking at their devices. So this is not just attorneys, but I think that we in particular are pulled to our phones because of this and because of the expectation responsiveness. And, I remember the days, I can wax nostalgic for just a second, which is in the olden days, when I walked into the office, if I wasn't in the office, I wasn't available. If it didn't come in a letter or correspondence, you didn't receive it, and then faxes and all that. But what's happening with email is that there's no prioritization. It's just this massive influx of constant flow of information and documents, and some are critical. But how easy is it to delete? How easy is it to manage that flow of information? And that's the huge challenge. And we call it, I call it the giant sucking machine of time. Because I don't know about you, but it can be like a black hole, and it's not.
Oh, absolutely.
All of a sudden you look up, it's an hour later, or, oh, I have to leave in 2 minutes. Well, I'll just answer these, and next thing you know, 20 minutes has gone by. And
that's why we've developed the 4 Ds of email, actually. So.
It is. It has, honestly, it's changed my life. So one of the challenges that we had in our group coaching was to get your inbox to 0. And you should have heard the groans that go that were going on. Some people never cleared out their inbox, and they've got over 10,000 emails sitting in their inbox. So I have to say that was a huge challenge, but it has made an incredible difference in the amount of time that I spend dealing with it. And so, Jeff, if you will
founder,
switch
Mark
to the next
Powers,
one.
actually challenged us as Atticus staff to clear our inbox to 0, and he gave us a deadline to do it by. And I did. I was one of those 8,000 to 9,000 emails in my inbox. Some of them were 3 years old, and some of them were ads that I just skipped over. And I was like, why is that important? My mindset was like, it's not a big deal. And Mark's like, try it. You might like it. So I did. And I got to tell you, it took stress away from me. And I didn't even realize that they were causing me stress, but it was a toleration. It was something I was tolerating with these 8,000 emails. So
it's amazing. It's a huge interruption, isn't it? Because you're constantly checking your email, and it could be just 1 second or 2 seconds to read a listserv email. Oh, I'm not interested in that, and delete. But when you add that up during the course of a day, it prevents you from either doing work that you can be paid for, or getting something else accomplished, or even just going home early, right? Yep. So the 4 strategies that he introduced and came up with, what we call the 4 Ds, right? First, you do it. You scan it. Honestly, the first thing is that you triage whatever's in there now, right? And so I use Outlook, and it's very easy to set up rules. So first thing I got rid of was all of the listservs. Listservs automatically, they don't go in my inbox. It goes directly into a file. And it comes up with a little number on the side. It doesn't go into my inbox, so I'm not constantly filtering that. I look at it every couple days. I scan it, and it takes maybe 30 seconds instead of constant a few seconds here, a few seconds there, and then I have to redirect my attention where it should have been. That's just, honestly, a couple hours of gain time over the term of a week. And so getting through that triage is huge. Setting up folders for clients or the types of communication is huge. But setting up those rules is very easy. And it makes life a lot easier so what you're doing when you set up rules or parameters about how and sorting emails as they come in, what it allows that to happen then is that things that are important float to the surface. They're not at the bottom of the list where you're like, oh, I know there was something important down there, like in email 5,000, and you're not having to search for them either, where you're having to, again, kind of sort through all these old emails. It makes life a lot easier. The other thing that I did that was key was not having staff communication and conversation take place through email. That made an immense difference, where there's applications like Slack. I think Office 365 has a chat function. Clio now has a chat function. So there are other ways to have chatter and, hey, what do you think about this? And some of these conversational things out of your email communications. My rule is anything that's not billable by the staff doesn't go through email. And it has made an incredible difference in hundreds of emails a day, especially those ones that are annoying where you get a reply that's just thanks. Come on, right? Yeah. Because you have to take
and they hit
3 to 5 seconds. Right, exactly. So the 4 rules are pretty simple. So once you do your triage and your clean out and you've sorted through things and you've made some rules, it makes it really easy to keep it to a very, 5 or less is my general rule. I have no more than 5 at any given time. You do it right away if it can be done quickly and taken care of. If you delay it, that's fine. You might need to come back to it. And I have a folder that's called 001, so it's always at the very top, and that's where those go. They're out of my inbox, but that's my first place that I look when I've got scheduled time to go and deal with whatever that is. It might need a longer response, more thoughtful response. Delegate it, that's great. But what I've learned also is I don't delegate through email, because what does it do? It floats to the bottom. So that's where we started implementing the task bar on Clio. It's amazing what happens when you actually start using the tools that you have appropriately. It's just amazing. So what we do is we use the task bar and task tool through Clio, and I'm sure there's virtually any practice management tool has a task bar. But when we started using it, I could get it off my mental checklist. It actually got done, and it helped me communicate with my staff. So if they ask me to review something, I can look at a moment's notice and see all the important things that have to be done and by when. And then I can take it off my mental checklist because I'll get a confirmation that a task that I created for someone else was complete. So using email for those tasks for a delegation is that's not the best use of email or that tool. Right. Deleting is an ongoing process. There are a couple strategies with regard to that. First, unsubscribing from any of those coupons and all that other garbage that we get. The other tool, the other strategy for using that, create a personal email account, because sometimes we like coupons, right? Or we like deals, or we know when there's a thing. That's fine. But I create a separate email address that's just for that purpose, that I check once in a blue moon. But it doesn't come into my main email box.
Michele, Denise, if I could interject for just a second. I hate to interrupt this conversation. We have about 9 or 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get to the Q&A portion in case anyone has any questions they wish to ask. So if there's a part that you would like to jump to, we can do that. Or if you think you can sort of reach an ending point in your conversation in the next few minutes, we can get to Q&A for the attendees.
I would like to spend one quick minute on the next slide because I think it's important. When you do client selection, how important it is to make sure that you're not letting the wrong people through the door. So often attorneys will practice what we call threshold law. Whoever will come in over the threshold will take as a client, but they end up just being time sucks and just burdens on you, and they don't pay their bills and all of this. So very briefly, can you discuss the 80-20 on client selection?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeff, if you will go to that, there you go. So this happens at intake. So that first conversation that happens with my admin, there's a scorecard. How does she know what a great client looks like? You know what a great client looks like, but actually having a scorecard is key. So I'll bet everybody on this call can think of at least one client or two clients that every time they call, the entire team goes, oh, God. And low pay, they're frustrating and a nightmare, and they take up an incredible amount of your time. I would invite you to not work with those people. Your staff will love you for it.
Just say no.
Your satisfaction, just say no. Just say no. A lawyer's not a bus. Because they're at the stop, you don't have to pick them up. That is really key. Work with great people, staff and clients. You will feel so much better, and so will your team.
Okay, so we are going to shift over to questions and kind of talk about what might be next for those out there listening and who might want to learn more information or get some more tips on how to manage their time a little bit better. So I'm going to toss it back over to Jeff.
Excellent. Thank you, Denise. Michele, Denise, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for drilling into the topic of time management. It can sometimes seem cumbersome or even boring to some attorneys, but if it isn't mastered, it can really stand in the way of growth. So for those of you still with us, there is a Q&A portion to this. If you have questions you wish to ask to or of Michele and Denise, get those put together or think of one you might like to ask. We do have a couple of recommendations before Q&A. Our first is to attend one of our one-day exclusive workshops. This is our most popular. It's called Double Your Revenue. You see a handful of dates down there at the bottom of the screen. These are the next upcoming installments for the rest of 2019. So this isn't simply about doubling your workload. This is about finding additional revenue streams for your practice. Attorneys who complete this workshop typically achieve a doubling in about 12 to 18 months. And for those who don't, they're still seeing 40 to 60% increases in their annual revenues on average. So I strongly encourage you to consider attending one of these. One workshop that we're doing in conjunction with the October 4th date is our How to Build a Profitable Team workshop. We're doing this the day before on October 3rd. And we're really drilling down into staffing topics from onboarding to hiring, finding qualified candidates, and how to continue to evaluate them in an effective manner. And as with each of our workshops, seating is limited, so if you do wish to register and you find there aren't any spots left, join the waiting list. Email grow@atticusadvantage.com, and we'll let you know when the next installment is occurring. Our second recommendation is to do a practice growth diagnostic. So this is where you're taking a deeper look at your practice and at your leadership and management skills to learn how your unique strengths can be leveraged to increase profitability. There's 4 components to this. The first is the practice assessment, going back to the 4 table legs or the 4 core business management skills of time management, marketing, profitability, and staffing. The assessment takes these and breaks them down into a series of simple questions that you simply rate on a scale from 1 to 5, and we ask you about goals that you have for your practice. The second component is the DISC behavioral profile, which Michele and Denise so eloquently described earlier on in the webinar. The third component is the advisor growth analysis, which takes the form of a phone call. Typically, it lasts about an hour, but can go as long as 90 minutes. And this is where we're taking those 2 documents, the DISC and the practice assessment, and using those as a starting point to drill down into the state of systems as they currently exist in your practice and the potential they have to be refined and really foster growth. And finally, the 3 most impactful actions. The fourth component, this is what you're walking away with to focus on implementing for the next 30, 60, 90 plus days out to get the most positive change in the shortest amount of time. And what is your investment? It's $295, which includes everything that I just mentioned, plus the 1-hour teleconference with the Practice Growth Diagnostic Advisor. To get started, simply go to atticusadvantage.com, click on Let's Get Started, and this will take you through the process of scheduling and registering for the Practice Growth Diagnostic. Or you could email us at grow@atticusadvantage.com. And for those of you who register for one of these today, we'll mail you a complimentary copy of our best-selling book, Time Management for Attorneys. So another somewhat humorous slide here to sort of get near the end before Q&A. We want to make sure that you take action. Thinking too long about this can be creative procrastination. You could find yourself becoming a victim of analysis paralysis. I almost got tongue-tied there. So in order to see where you're at and what might be stopping you from growing, and to get your opinion on this webinar, to see if you liked it, if anything of note stuck with you between then and now, we're going to follow up with you. We'll give you a call here in the next day or week or so and see where you're at and what we might be able to do to help you take action. So with that, thank you very much, and let's get to the Q&A session. If you have a question, and I strongly encourage you to ask Denise and Michele, if you do, you have a few options. You can use the chat function on your GoToWebinar dashboard. Send me a message. If you wish to remain anonymous, simply indicate so, and I'll read your question. Or you can click the hand icon. Let me know you have a question. I'll call on you, unmute you, and then you can ask your question of Denise and Michele yourself. So let's see if we have anything in the pipeline for questions here. Okay, I do see one here. So this, the build-up or the lead-in for this is a few sentences, but I'm sure you'll be able to answer it just fine. So this attorney says, I, like many, accept cases because the client is willing to pay something right now, and I need the money. And I realize that this focus on the short-term gain has a great long-term cost. I'm constantly dealing with the client's immediate problems because they'll pay me this week, but then I don't have enough time to devote to the more lucrative long-term cases, which is really where I need to focus my efforts. And then those clients are annoyed because their cases aren't moving quickly enough. Any suggestions for this?
Yes, I'd say it sounds like a cash flow crunch, that your cash flow is determining the quality of the clients that you take. And so that's something that I would encourage you to go through the Practice Growth Diagnostic. I would encourage you to join a group because there's people that have all gone through that same thing. And it sounds like there's some deeper things going on with cash flow. Are you having time to market? Are you working on your core referrals so that you get higher quality people in the door? all of those things contribute to pressure for cash so that you take what's immediately in front of you. So it sounds like that's what that is to me. And I would recommend immediately that you take that practice growth diagnostic, because there might be something else that's going on as well. You know, what are the firm's expenses like? Or what's your time like? How are you able to manage the cash flow? Do you have any, in the question, it doesn't sound like there's much staff that's available to help support the processing of those clients. So that's where I would say. Denise, do you have any other suggestions?
No, I think you covered it great. And just think in terms of what's the ultimate cost of taking that client on, because it's going to be expensive in the end. Yeah.
Excellent. So no further questions have come in through the pipeline here. So I think we can wrap up the webinar. Once again, Michele, thank you so much. Denise, thank you so much for the conversation and the analysis. And for the attendees, thank you for the time. And we look forward to working with all of you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure.